The gate slammed shut right in front of my truck, metal echoing across the valley like it belonged there. A guard stepped out of a booth I had never seen before and told me to turn around. Said I was trespassing. On my own land. The gravel crunched under my boots as I stepped out, heat rising off the hood, dust hanging in the morning air. Something felt wrong immediately. That gate wasn't here last month. Neither was the booth. I looked past him and saw rooftops. Dozens of them. Clean lines. Fresh paint. Streets cut through land I knew like the back of my hand. My land. I drove out here to check a fence line. That was it. Simple. Routine. Instead, I was staring at a full neighborhood where open pasture used to breathe. A wooden sign stood to the right, polished and deliberate. Silver Creek Estates. Private HOA community. The words didn't sit right. Not even close. I walked closer. The smell of fresh asphalt hit first. Then paint. Then something else. Control. The guard repeated himself, firmer this time. I almost laughed. Almost. But something in his posture said he believed it. That was the problem. I pulled out my phone. Opened the property map. Blue lines. Boundaries. All of it still said the same thing. 2,300 acres. Owned by Ethan Caldwell. Me. I held the screen up. He barely glanced at it. Said the HOA had documentation. Said everything inside that gate was private property now. Private. The word stuck in my throat. I looked past him again. A golf cart rolled by in the distance. A couple walking a dog. Kids on bikes. Like this place had been here for years. But it hadn't. I would have known. I always know. A black SUV pulled up behind me. Smooth. Quiet. The door opened before the engine fully stopped. Victoria Hargrove stepped out like she had rehearsed this moment. Clean heels. Pressed blazer. That kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. She didn't ask who I was. She already knew. Said my name like she owned it. Told the guard it was handled. Then she looked at me. Calm. Certain. Called me a trespasser. Right there. On land my grandfather bled for. On soil I paid taxes on every single year. A few residents started to gather. Watching. Curious. Waiting to see how this would play out. Victoria held up a folder. Thick. Official. Stamped pages. Said everything here was legal. Said the HOA had full authority over the development. Development. I kept staring at that word. It didn't match the map in my head. Didn't match the lines I grew up walking. The wind picked up, carrying dust across the entrance. For a second, everything went quiet. Too quiet. I glanced down at the edge of the road. Something small caught my eye. A marker. Half buried. Old metal. Bent but still there. My survey marker. They built everything around it. Not over it. Around it. That's when something clicked. Not loud. Just enough. I looked back at Victoria. Still smiling. Still confident. And I realized she was standing in the wrong place. I did not say another word. I just stepped past her and walked straight to that old marker like everything else around us did not exist. The metal was cold under my fingers. Bent. Scratched. But still exactly where it was supposed to be. That marker had been placed over 40 years ago. Before any of these houses. Before any of these roads. It did not move. Land like this does not lie. I brushed the dirt off with my boot and checked the coordinates in my head. Something was off. Not with me. With them. I looked back at the entrance. The gate. The booth. The exact line where asphalt met gravel. It was subtle. Most people would never notice. But I did. Because I had walked every inch of this property since I was a kid. Victoria was still talking behind me. Legal terms. Authority. Development rights. She sounded confident. Too confident. Like someone reading from a script they did not fully understand. I pulled out my phone again. Not the map this time. The old survey scans. High resolution. Every boundary. Every easement. Every right-of-way. My thumb hovered for a second before I zoomed in on the entrance corridor. That was when my chest tightened just a little. The road they built did not sit where they thought it did. It shifted. Just a few feet. But enough. Always enough. I glanced up at the guard. Then at the SUV behind me. Then back at Victoria. She was watching me now. Not smiling anymore. Something in my silence made her uneasy. Good. The wind carried the faint hum of a generator from inside the neighborhood. Power lines stretched clean and new across my pasture. Or what used to be pasture. Every house depended on that entrance. Every delivery. Every resident. Every emergency vehicle. All of it flowed through that one narrow strip of land. I turned the screen toward myself and traced the line slowly. The original access easement. Still intact. Still valid. And it did not belong to them. It belonged to me. Not the houses. Not the roads. Just that one strip. The only way in. I felt the dust settle in the back of my throat as everything started to line up. They did not take the land the way I thought. They built around ownership. Around paperwork. Around visibility. But they missed the one thing that actually mattered. Control. Victoria took a step closer. Asked what I was looking at. Her voice had changed. Just slightly. I locked my phone and slipped it back into my pocket. I did not answer. Not yet. Because if I was right, this was not a fight anymore. It was leverage. And they had no idea they were already standing on it. I looked at the gate one more time. The hinges. The keypad. The line where it cut across the entrance. Then I smiled, just a little. Because they built everything they owned behind something they did not. I turned away from the gate before she could ask another question. Gravel crunched under my boots again, slower this time. I did not need to push. Not yet. The guard watched me like I might try something. I did not even look at him. I just walked back to my truck and let the silence stretch a little longer than it should have. That silence bothered them. I could feel it. Victoria called after me, something about legal boundaries, about respecting private property. Her voice carried across the open air, sharp now, not polished anymore. I opened my truck door and paused. The interior still smelled like leather and dust and heat. Familiar. Real. Not like the staged perfection behind that gate. I sat down but did not start the engine. Not yet. I pulled the old survey back up and zoomed in again. That narrow strip of land at the entrance. 20 feet wide. Running straight through the only access point. Mine. Always had been. Always would be unless I sold it. And I had never sold anything. Not a single acre. A pickup rolled up behind Victoria. Another resident. Curious. Then another. People were starting to gather now. Watching. Waiting. They still thought this was some kind of misunderstanding. That part almost made me smile. I started the engine. The low rumble filled the air, steady and controlled. I backed up slowly, tires pressing into the loose gravel just outside the paved entrance. The edge between what they built and what I owned was right there. You could feel it more than see it. That line mattered. More than any of them understood. As I turned the wheel, I caught Victoria watching me again. Really watching now. Trying to read what I was not saying. Good luck with that. I drove off without another word. No threats. No arguments. No scene. Just left. That was the part that unsettled people like her the most. No reaction meant no control. The road stretched out in front of me, dust trailing behind in a long thin cloud. My hand stayed steady on the wheel, but my mind was already moving faster than the truck. Every house back there depended on that single entrance. Trash pickup. Mail delivery. Emergency services. Utility maintenance. Everything. All of it had to pass through that corridor. My corridor. I reached the main highway and slowed down just enough to pull over near an old fence post. The wire was rusted but still held tension. Like everything else out here. I stepped out again and leaned against the truck, staring back toward the direction of the gate even though I could not see it anymore. The wind carried faint construction noise. Distant. Busy. Expanding. They were still building. Still investing. Still stacking value on top of something they did not fully control. That was not just a mistake. That was a multiplier. I pulled out my phone again and scrolled through the county records. Deeds. Easements. Transfer history. It was all there if you knew where to look. They had permits. They had approvals. They even had zoning support. But none of that touched the access line. Not once. Not anywhere. Which meant one thing. They built an entire neighborhood without securing the only legal way in or out. I let that settle for a second. Just long enough to feel the weight of it. Then I pushed off the truck and got back inside. The engine idled low, steady, patient. Just like me. I looked down at the map one more time, tracing that narrow strip with my finger. Then I nodded once to myself. Because now it was not about proving anything. It was about timing. And timing changes everything when you are holding the only door they have. I did not drive home. I drove straight to the county records office. The building smelled like old paper and air conditioning that never quite worked. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Everything in there moved slow. That worked in my favor. I signed in, nodded at the clerk, and headed straight for the public terminals. My boots echoed on the tile. Sharp. Out of place. Just like that gate. I pulled up the parcel maps first. Layer by layer. Development overlays. Zoning approvals. HOA filings. It was all clean on the surface. Too clean. That was the first sign. Real land history always has scars. Adjustments. Disputes. These records looked polished. Recent. Like someone wanted them to look simple. I leaned closer to the screen and started peeling it back. One layer at a time. Old deeds. Transfer logs. Easement filings. That was where things usually get messy. That was where people miss things. I found their master filing. Silver Creek Estates Development Group. Filed 3 years ago. Large-scale subdivision approval. Backed by permits. Backed by signatures. Backed by money. A lot of money. But I kept scrolling. Because none of that mattered if the access was wrong. My fingers slowed when I reached the infrastructure section. Roads. Utilities. Drainage. Then access easements. There it was. A thin line on the map. Faint. Easy to ignore. But it was still there. My name attached to it. Not theirs. Never transferred. Never modified. Just sitting there like a loaded detail nobody checked twice. I clicked deeper. Supporting documents. Survey attachments. Legal descriptions written in language most people would skip. I did not skip. I read every word. The air felt cooler all of a sudden. Or maybe that was just me. The entrance corridor was listed as a shared access proposal. Proposed. Not granted. Not finalized. Not signed by me. That meant something very simple. They built everything assuming that step would get handled later. It never did. I leaned back in the chair and let that settle for a second. Just long enough to be sure. Then I checked again. Cross-referenced with older records. Same result. No transfer. No agreement. No legal right for them to control that strip. Behind me, someone dropped a folder. Papers slid across the floor. Nobody rushed. Nobody panicked. That place moved on a different clock. I turned back to the screen and zoomed out. The entire neighborhood sat behind that one missing piece. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in construction. Maybe millions. All dependent on 20 feet of land they did not own. That kind of oversight does not happen by accident. It happens when people think they are untouchable. I stood up slowly and walked back to the counter. The clerk barely looked up. I requested certified copies. All of it. Deeds. Easements. Survey maps. Every document tied to that corridor. She printed forms. I signed them. The printer behind her started running, steady and loud in the quiet room. Each page sliding out felt heavier than it should. Not because of the paper. Because of what it meant. I gathered the stack and flipped through it once. Just enough to confirm. Every line said the same thing in a different way. They built a gate on land that was never theirs. I stepped outside into the heat again. Sunlight hit hard after that dim room. The air smelled like dry grass and hot pavement. Real again. I walked back to my truck and set the documents on the passenger seat. The edges lifted slightly in the breeze from the open door. I rested my hand on top of them for a second. Grounded. Certain. Then I looked out toward the horizon where that entrance sat miles away. Hidden behind trees and fresh asphalt and false confidence. I did not need to rush back there. Not anymore. Because now it was not just a suspicion. It was proof. And proof does not need volume. It just needs the right moment to be used. I closed the truck door and started the engine again, already thinking 3 steps ahead of where they were, because they still had no idea what they actually forgot to secure. I did not go back to the gate that day. I let it sit. Let them build. Let them believe everything was fine. That part mattered more than anything. People make bigger mistakes when they feel safe. The next morning, I was up before sunrise. Coffee still hot in my hand, dust already settling across the porch. I spread the documents out on the table, each page flat, edges lined up. The paper felt heavier in the quiet morning air. I read through them again. Slowly. Not because I needed to. Because I wanted to see exactly where they crossed the line. Every clause. Every omission. Every place they assumed control they never had. The entrance easement was still untouched. Still mine. No signatures. No transfers. Just a gap they built their entire project around. That was not just a mistake. That was a foundation crack. I took a sip of coffee and stared out across the land. The sun started to rise, cutting long shadows across the grass. Somewhere out there, behind those trees, they were waking up inside homes that depended on my land to function. That thought stayed with me. Not loud. Just steady. Around 9, I made a call. Not to a lawyer. Not yet. That would come later. I called a surveyor I trusted. Old school. Precise. The kind of guy who does not guess. I gave him coordinates. Told him I needed a boundary verification on a specific corridor. He did not ask many questions. Just said he could be there by afternoon. That was enough. By the time he pulled up, the heat had settled in. His truck kicked up dust as it rolled to a stop. He stepped out, nodded once, and got to work. No wasted motion. Equipment out. Tripod set. Laser aligned. The faint beep of calibration cut through the quiet air. I watched from a few feet back. Let him do his job. The land does not lie. It just needs someone to read it correctly. He moved along the line slowly, checking points, marking positions. Every few minutes he would stop, adjust, verify. Then move. Again. No emotion. Just precision. After about an hour, he stood still longer than usual. Looked down at his device. Then back up toward the direction of the HOA entrance. Then back to the device again. That pause said everything. I walked over. Did not say anything. Just waited. He turned the screen toward me. The line was clear. Sharp. Exact. And it ran straight through the entrance gate they built. Not near it. Not beside it. Through it. I felt something settle in my chest. Not surprise. Confirmation. He nodded once, like he already knew what I was thinking. Said the same thing in plain words. That gate is not where they think it is. We stood there for a second, both looking toward the trees in the distance. He packed up slowly, like the job was already done. Because it was. Before he left, I asked for a full certified report. Boundaries. Coordinates. Everything documented clean. He said he would have it ready in 2 days. That was perfect. I watched his truck disappear down the dirt road, dust trailing behind it in a thin line that faded into the heat. The land went quiet again. Just wind and open space. I looked down at the ground where he had marked the line. A simple marker. Small. Easy to ignore. Just like the one at the gate. That detail stayed with me. Because they ignored it too. I picked up one of the flags and held it for a second, feeling the weight of something much bigger than it looked. Then I pushed it back into the ground exactly where it belonged. Straight. Firm. Unmoving. And for the first time since I saw that gate, I stopped thinking about whether I was right and started thinking about when to make them realize it. I waited the 2 days without touching anything. No calls. No emails. No warnings. Just watched. The mornings came in quiet. Light spreading across the land like nothing had changed. But everything had. I drove out near the tree line one afternoon and parked where I could see the top of the entrance road through the gap. Cars moved in and out like clockwork. Delivery vans. Landscaping trucks. Families heading home. Nobody questioned the gate. Nobody questioned the road. Why would they? It looked permanent. That was the problem. Things that look permanent make people careless. I leaned against the truck and listened. The distant hum of traffic. The soft buzz of insects. And underneath it all, the faint rhythm of a place running on borrowed access. That detail stayed with me. Late that evening, my phone buzzed. The survey report was ready. I picked it up the next morning. Thick folder. Clean print. Every coordinate locked in. Every line verified twice. I flipped through it in the parking lot. No ambiguity. No gray area. The boundary cut directly across the entrance infrastructure. Gate posts. Security booth. Keypad system. All of it sat on my land. Not partially. Entirely. I closed the folder slowly. The air felt different now. Heavier. Not from doubt. From clarity. I got back in the truck and drove without turning on the radio. Silence worked better. Gave space to think. I did not head home. I headed somewhere else. A small office just off the main highway. Plain building. No sign out front. The kind of place most people pass without noticing. Inside, it smelled like printer ink and stale coffee. I sat down across from a man who had handled land deals in this county longer than most people had lived here. I placed the folder on his desk. Did not say much. Just told him to read. He took his time. Page by page. No rush. No reaction at first. Then his eyebrows shifted. Just slightly. That was enough. He leaned back and looked at me. Asked one question. Why have they not secured this? I shrugged. Because they thought they already did. He nodded once. That answer made sense to him. He tapped the map with his finger. Right where the entrance sat. Said this was not a dispute. This was leverage. Clean leverage. The best kind. I asked him what options looked like. He listed them calmly. I could shut it down. Block access. Force negotiation. Trigger legal action. Each one heavier than the last. Each one slower. Messier. Loud. That was not what I wanted. Not yet. I asked him about something else. Something simpler. His expression changed again. Curious now. I pointed at the corridor. 20 feet wide. The only way in or out. Then I asked one question. What happens if someone else owns this instead of me? He did not answer right away. He just looked at the map. Then back at me. Then at the map again. The room felt still for a second. Even the air conditioning seemed quieter. Finally, he spoke. Said whoever owns that strip controls everything behind it. Every vehicle. Every service. Every movement. Total control without touching a single house. That was the answer I needed. I nodded once and stood up. He asked if I was planning to sell. I picked up the folder and held it for a second. The weight of it felt different now. Not just proof. Opportunity. I did not answer him directly. I just said I might. Then I walked out into the heat again. The sunlight hit hard, reflecting off the truck hood. I stood there for a moment, looking back toward the direction of the development miles away. They were still building. Still expanding. Still investing like nothing was wrong. That was exactly how I wanted it. Because the more they built, the more they depended on something they did not own. I opened the truck door and set the folder down carefully. My hand rested on it for a second before I let go. Because now it was not about whether they missed it. It was about deciding who I wanted to give that control to. I did not rush the next step. Rushing closes doors. Timing opens them. I spent the next few days watching patterns instead of people. Early morning traffic. Late afternoon returns. Service trucks on schedule. Everything moved through that same narrow strip like clockwork. It was predictable. Too predictable. That made it valuable. I sat in my truck one morning just off the main road and counted. 23 vehicles in under 15 minutes. Families. Contractors. Deliveries. Every single one passed over land they did not realize was not part of their community. That detail stayed quiet. Hidden. Exactly how I wanted it. I pulled out my phone and made a different kind of call this time. Not to a lawyer. Not to the county. To a developer I knew from a previous deal. Logistics background. Smart. Patient. The kind of guy who understands access better than appearances. He picked up on the second ring. I did not explain everything. Just gave him coordinates and asked him to come take a look. He showed up the next afternoon in a clean truck that looked like it had never seen real dirt. That told me enough about him already. We stood near the tree line, looking toward the entrance from a distance. He asked what he was looking at. I handed him the survey report and let him read. He did not speak for a while. Just scanned the pages. Then looked up at the road. Then back at the pages again. That shift in his posture was small, but it was there. Recognition. Opportunity. He asked if the documents were verified. I told him twice. He nodded slowly. His eyes moved back to the entrance like he was seeing it for the first time. That was the moment. I asked him one question. What is that strip worth to you? He did not answer right away. Smart. He walked a few steps closer, like distance would change the math. It did not. Then he turned back and gave me a number. Low at first. Testing. I did not react. Not even a blink. Silence stretched between us. Wind moved through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a truck passed through the gate, completely unaware of the conversation happening a few hundred yards away. That detail made me almost smile. He adjusted his number. Higher this time. Still cautious. Still probing. I shook my head once. Slow. Calm. Not rejecting him. Just letting him know he was not there yet. He studied me for a second. Then he asked what I was really selling. That question mattered. Most people would say land. Or access. Or development potential. He already knew it was more than that. I pointed toward the entrance. Then toward the houses beyond it. Then back to the road itself. I told him I was selling control. Not loud. Just clear. That word hung in the air longer than anything else we had said. He looked at the gate again. This time slower. More deliberate. The kind of look people give when they realize something has been sitting in plain sight the whole time. He asked how soon I wanted to move. I told him soon enough. But not today. Not tomorrow. Timing mattered more than price. Because every day that passed, more people moved in. More value stacked behind that gate. More dependence built. On something they did not own. He nodded again, this time with more weight behind it. Said he would think about it. Said he would run numbers. Said he would call me. I did not push. I did not follow up. I just let him leave with the idea in his head. Because ideas like that do not go away. They grow. I stood there after he drove off, dust settling slowly back onto the road. The entrance sat quiet in the distance, like nothing had changed. But something had. I checked my phone once, then slipped it back into my pocket. Because now it was not about if someone would buy that strip. It was about who would realize first what it could really do. I let 3 more days pass before anything moved. Not because I needed time. Because they needed it. The neighborhood kept growing. More trucks. More families. More routine settling in like it had always been there. One afternoon, I parked closer than before. Just far enough to stay unnoticed. Close enough to hear the gate open and close. The soft mechanical click. The low hum of the motor. That sound repeated every few seconds. Constant. Reliable. Dependent. I watched a delivery driver hesitate at the keypad. A resident waved him through. Simple. Normal. Except it was not. None of it was. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I already knew who it was before I checked. The developer. His name lit up the screen. I let it ring once more before answering. His voice was different now. Less cautious. More certain. He did not waste time. Said he ran the numbers. Said he understood what that strip actually meant. I did not respond right away. Just listened. He offered again. Higher this time. Not testing anymore. Serious. The kind of number that would make most people say yes without thinking twice. I looked at the gate while he talked. Watched another car pass through. Then another. Still unaware. Still routine. That detail mattered more than the number. I asked him one thing. What happens the moment you own it? He did not hesitate. Said control shifts immediately. Access terms. Usage agreements. Restrictions if needed. Everything behind that entrance would depend on him. Not the HOA. Not Victoria. Him. I could hear the confidence in his voice now. That told me everything I needed. I gave him a time. Not a date. Just a window. Soon. He agreed. No pushback. No negotiation. That part was already done. I ended the call and sat there for a moment longer, watching the flow of traffic. The rhythm had not changed. But I knew it was about to. The next morning, I drove back to the county office. Same building. Same quiet air. This time I did not go to the public terminals. I went straight to the recording desk. The clerk recognized me. Gave a small nod. I handed over the documents. Clean. Prepared. Exact legal description of the corridor. Transfer paperwork already reviewed. Already structured. No room for confusion. She flipped through the pages, checked the identifiers, then stamped the first sheet. The sound was sharp. Final. It echoed more than it should have in that quiet room. I watched her process each page. One after another. Methodical. Permanent. When she finished, she slid the copies back across the counter. Official. Recorded. Done. I picked them up and held them for a second. The weight felt different now. Not potential anymore. Action. I stepped outside into the heat again. The sunlight hit hard, same as before. But something had shifted. Not visible. Not yet. I got back into the truck and sat there without starting it. Just thinking. Not about what I had done. About what would happen next. Because somewhere behind that gate, nothing had changed. The residents were still moving in. The HOA was still operating. Victoria was still in control. Or at least she thought she was. I finally started the engine and pulled onto the road. Dust rose behind me in a slow, steady trail. The same road that led to that entrance. The same strip that no longer belonged to me. I glanced once at the folder on the passenger seat. New ownership. New control. And the people behind that gate had no idea it had already changed hands. The first sign something shifted was not loud. It was a pause. A delivery truck rolled up to the gate like it always did, but this time it stopped longer than usual. The driver leaned out, confused, looking at the keypad like it had changed overnight. It had not. Not physically. But something behind it had. I was parked far enough away to watch without being seen. The morning sun reflected off the metal gate, same as every other day. But the rhythm was off. The guard stepped out, spoke into a radio, then looked back at the truck. That hesitation spread fast. Another car pulled up behind. Then another. Small delays. Barely noticeable. But they stacked. That was how it started. Inside the neighborhood, nothing looked different. Lawns trimmed. Cars parked clean. People walking dogs like it was just another day. But the system they relied on had already changed hands. And systems do not fail all at once. They slip. Quietly. I checked my phone. No messages yet. That was expected. It takes time for confusion to reach the right people. By mid-morning, the developer called. His voice was calm. Controlled. Said he had already issued preliminary notices. Not to the residents. To the HOA. Formal. Legal. Direct. Access rights had been transferred. New terms were in place. Usage now required agreement. Compliance. Structure. He kept it simple. No threats. Just facts. I looked back at the entrance. The line of cars had grown longer. Not dramatic. Just enough to feel wrong. A resident stepped out of his vehicle, talking to the guard, pointing toward the keypad like it was broken. It was not broken. It was restricted. That difference mattered. By noon, the first real reaction hit. Victoria's SUV pulled up fast. Too fast for someone in control. She stepped out, same clean outfit, same posture. But her movements were tighter now. Faster. She spoke to the guard. Then to someone on her phone. Then she turned and scanned the area like she was trying to find something she missed. That part almost made me smile. Because she had. The developer called again later. Said they reached out. Urgent tone. Demanding clarification. He kept his response simple. Ownership had changed. Access was now governed differently. Negotiation was available. But not optional. That word carried weight. I watched as a service truck was turned away. Not aggressively. Just redirected. The driver shook his head, confused, then drove off. Inside that gate, small cracks were starting to show. Not in the buildings. In the flow. In the expectation that things would always work the same way. Victoria stepped aside, phone pressed tight to her ear. Her expression had lost that smooth control. Replaced by something sharper. Something uncertain. She looked at the gate. Then at the road. Then back at the gate again. Like she was trying to understand how something so simple could change everything. I stayed where I was. Quiet. Still. Just watching it unfold exactly how I knew it would. No shouting. No confrontation. Just pressure applied in the right place. The developer's final message came through just before I left. Short. Direct. They want to meet. I looked at the entrance one last time. The same gate. The same road. The same houses behind it. Nothing looked different. But everything was. I started the engine and pulled away slowly, dust rising behind me in a thin line. Because now it was not about proving who owned the land. It was about watching them realize who controlled it.